Vanessa's shout rang through the hall like a rifle blast. 300 mothers and fathers turned to stare. A handful of them feigned ignorance. The majority didn't even bother to look away. My name is Rupert. At 32, I was standing at the back of the Tucson Community Arts Center, clutching my child's garment bag while my spouse humiliated me in front of every guardian, instructor, and student in attendance. All of this transpired because I neglected to bring Evie's dance slippers. Those issues were sitting in the vehicle just 40 feet away. He had already sent Vanessa a text explaining I was retrieving them, but she required an audience. She always craved a crowd. A single task, she persisted, her tone carrying that rehearsed air of tragedy she had refined over our 6-year marriage. I gave you one basic responsibility, and you failed even that. What is your problem? He stayed silent. He had realized years prior that talking back only escalated the situation. Consequently, I just stood there taking the abuse, feeling the heat rise up my neck while strangers shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. By trade, I was a Finnish woodworker, spending 12-hour shifts crafting bespoke cabinetry for luxury residences throughout the city. My palms were rough with calluses. My spine frequently throbbed by nightfall. I excelled at my craft, earned the respect of my contractors, and was trusted to deliver high-quality results without oversight. Yet, within my own home, I was apparently too dull to remember a pair of pink satin slippers. Ivy surfaced at the edge of the stage drapes, her little face twisted in distress. She was only 5. She couldn't comprehend why her mother was berating her father in public. She simply recognized that the feeling was wrong. He caught her gaze and attempted a reassuring expression. I tried to communicate silently that everything was okay, that this was routine, but it wasn't routine. He was aware of that. He had been aware for a long time. I stepped out to the lot, grabbed the footwear, and delivered them behind the stage without uttering a word. Vanessa was already there, instructing Ivy on her choreography as if nothing had occurred, as if she hadn't just shredded my dignity in front of 300 people. When I presented the shoes, Vanessa didn't acknowledge me or offer thanks, she merely snatched them and dismissed me like a servant. He returned to my place and observed my doctor's performance. She was stunning, graceful in the way only a 5-year-old can be, her tongue peeking out as she focused on her movements. Once the show concluded, I spotted the dance instructor near the exit. She was watching me. It wasn't exactly sympathy in her eyes. It was something different. Something that made me uneasy. It was as if she perceived a truth I wasn't prepared to acknowledge. Vanessa and I first met at a social gathering when I was 25. She was vibrant, self-assured, and quick-witted. I was the quiet, reliable type who arrived early and stayed to assist with the cleanup. She claimed to admire those traits in me. She called me dependable. Re-evaluating it now, I suspect dependable was just her word for easy to manage. The initial years were pleasant, or so I convinced myself. We purchased a modest home in a good school district, and Ivy was born. He labored intensely. Vanessa remained home with our daughter, which seemed logical at the time. She expressed a desire to be there for those formative years. What escaped my notice was how quickly her presence would transform into total command, and how fast my status would drop from equal partner to subordinate. It began with minor critiques about the way I handled the chores or the brand of groceries I selected. There were eye rolls when I proposed weekend activities that didn't fit her preset agenda. Then, the volume increased. She began belittling me in social settings, mocking my views, and sharing anecdotes of my blunders as if they were jokes. Rupert attempted to build the nursery bed himself, she would remark at parties, sighing. I eventually had to ask my father to fix it. Honestly, I'm not sure how he would function without my help. The room would chuckle. I would grin along, acting as though the words didn't cut deep. But they did. My father had spent 4 decades in construction. He instilled in me the skills to build, the precision of measurement, and the pride of craftsmanship. He never spoke down to my mother. Not once. Even in disagreement, he treated her with dignity. He assumed that was the blueprint for a marriage. Over the years, I went quiet, stopped offering ideas, and gave up on being heard. It was simpler to just acquiesce, to nod, and to fade into the scenery of my own existence. My sister, Lie, took note. She would inquire if I was doing all right, and either claim everything was fine. What was the alternative? Admitting my wife viewed me as a fool? That I dreaded returning to my own house? Certain realities are too painful to voice. The recital night wasn't the cruelest thing Vanessa had done, but the environment, the public stage, Evie's fear, and the hushed witness of all those parents, made it feel distinct. Perhaps it was the realization that an outsider finally saw the truth clearly. The instructor's name was Claire. She had been Evie's teacher for 8 months. She was reserved, professional, and kind to the students. He knew very little about her, but she knew something intimate about me now, and that was frightening. After the performance, the foyer was packed with parents buying flowers and praising the dancers. Vanessa stood in the center of the crowd, taking credit for Evie's talent as if she had directed the entire show herself. I stayed at the periphery, holding the costume bag, waiting for the signal to depart. That was when Claire walked over. She approached softly, as if avoiding startling a skittish animal. Mr. Rupert, could I have a moment of your time? I nodded, shocked she even knew my name. She guided me to a secluded spot near the fountains. Her face was serene, but there was a careful intensity behind her eyes. I witnessed the events in the auditorium earlier, she remarked. I felt my frame go rigid. It was nothing. Used a small conflict. It wasn't nothing. Her tone was soft but unwavering. And it wasn't a conflict. I was at a loss for words. No one had ever confronted it so directly before. Claire glanced toward the lobby where Vanessa was laughing with another mother, then returned her gaze to me. May I share something with you? I nodded once more. She inhaled deeply. I was once wed to a person like that. Charismatic in public, but a different person behind closed doors. It took 8 years for the reality to set in. She stopped. 9 words altered my entire life. What were they? She locked eyes with me. Love should never make you feel this small. I felt those words strike deep in my soul. A place I had been shielding for years. A place I had tried to convince myself didn't matter. I'm not here to tell you how to live, Claire added. I simply recognized a pattern tonight. Something I wish someone had pointed out to me a long time ago. Before I could reply, Vanessa's voice sliced through the room. Rupert, we're leaving. Stop wasting people's time. Claire gave me a brief nod. Be kind to yourself. I followed my family out in a trance. Vanessa barely acknowledged me as we walked to the car. Ivy gripped my hand, babbling about how she nearly missed her turn but recovered at the last second. I buckled them in, turned the key, and drove home in a heavy silence. That night, once Ivy was tucked in and Vanessa was occupied with the TV, I sat on the rear deck and gazed at the stars. Love should never make you feel this small. I had spent 6 years diminishing myself, apologizing for errors that weren't mine, and enduring behavior I would never permit from a stranger. Something broke inside me that evening. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew I couldn't continue this way. Not for another day. In the ensuing weeks, I became more observant. I stopped listening to Vanessa's words, I knew those by heart, and looked at the underlying structures. I watched how she spoke to me in private versus in public. I noticed the way she beamed at strangers while barely looking at me. Everything I did was framed as a mistake or a disappointment. I began keeping a journal, not to build a legal case, initially, but just to see my life objectively. That is, remarks, incidents, a record of my actual reality. The list expanded more rapidly than I expected. One Thursday, I prepared the evening meal, grilled chicken, roasted greens, and Evie's preferred potatoes. I organized the table, poured the drinks, and waited. Vanessa entered, surveyed the meal, and let out a tired breath. You used the incorrect dinnerware, she noted. Those are for daily use. We have guests arriving this weekend. We don't have guests tonight. That isn't the issue. She dropped her bag. The issue is your lack of foresight. You never think. He felt the habitual urge to say I was sorry, to pacify her, to keep the peace. Instead, I replied, I cooked dinner. A simple thank you would be appropriate. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. Pardon me? I said a thank you would be nice. That's all. She glared at me as if I were a stranger. In 6 years, I had never stood my ground. Not even once. What has gotten into you? Her voice rose. You've been acting odd lately. Withdrawn. Irritable. I'm not irritable. I'm merely requesting basic courtesy. The word lingered, respect. A concept entirely missing from our home. Vanessa gave a dry laugh. It wasn't warm, it was designed to make me feel ignorant. Respect. She shook her head. If you want respect, earn it. Do something actually worth respecting. She brushed past me, took her food to the couch, and clicked on the television. The discussion was over. He ate with Ivy at the table. She talked about her school day, a caterpillar her class was studying, and her dream of riding a bicycle. He listened. He smiled. I fought to keep her from seeing the internal collapse I was experiencing. After the meal, I tidied the kitchen by myself. Vanessa never offered to help. I thought of Gladys' words again. She was right. And I was finished pretending she wasn't. The following day, I called Leah and told her we needed a real conversation. She drove over on her break and sat with me in my backyard shop. I believe my marriage has reached its end, I admitted. Leah didn't look shocked. I've been waiting for you to realize that for 3 years. Hearing that stung, but it confirmed something vital. I wasn't losing my mind. Others had seen it too. They were just waiting for me to see it for myself. Leah and I spoke for 2 hours. She revealed things I had previously ignored, how our mother noticed Vanessa's tone at family gatherings, how my colleagues asked if I was okay, and how even Ivy once mentioned that mommy yelled at daddy frequently. Everyone was aware. Everyone except me. Or perhaps I knew, but couldn't face the truth. That weekend, I began my research. I needed to define what I was living through. The library provided books on relationship dynamics and emotional patterns. I took 3 home and read them in the shop between tasks. What I discovered was chilling. Vanessa's behaviors, the public shaming, the constant belittling, the dismissal of my feelings, had a specific name: emotional abuse. He had never categorized it that way. He thought abuse had to be physical. But the descriptions fit perfectly: the isolation, the erosion of self-esteem, the way the victim begins to feel they deserve it. He had been living that reality for 6 years. The following Tuesday, I ran into Claire at the store. Ivy had finished her class, and Vanessa had sent me to get supplies for a party she was throwing. Claire spotted me first. How are you faring? I hesitated. Better, I think. Still processing everything. She nodded knowingly. The hardest part is finding your vision after years of living in a fog. We stood in the aisle, 2 near strangers bonded by a shared experience. May I ask, I said, how did you know leaving was the right choice? Claire paused. I asked myself one question: would I want my daughter to remain in a relationship like this? The answer was an absolute no. That provided all the clarity I needed. He thought of Ivy, and the lessons she was learning from our dynamic. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. He wouldn't want Ivy to live this way for a single second. He thanked Claire and finished my errands in silence, my mind finally made up. That night, I began hunting for a flat. Nothing extravagant, just a safe, quiet space where Ivy and I could live without fear. Vanessa sensed the shift in me, though she couldn't name it. You've been distant lately, she remarked one night. Where do you go? Just clearing my head. Clearing your head from what? I didn't reply. Some things weren't worth the energy of an explanation. I secured a two-bedroom place near Evie's school. The owner was a retired educator who was kind and didn't pry. He paid the deposit and hid the keys in my workshop. Next, I contacted a family attorney, Patricia, who focused on custody cases involving emotional trauma. I laid everything out, the public shaming, the control, the way Vanessa made me feel responsible for her moods. Patricia listened intently. Document every detail, she advised. Dates, times, and any witnesses. The more evidence we provide, the stronger your position. He was already ahead of her. My journal was nearly full. Over the next few weeks, I collected what I required, texts where she called me worthless, recordings of her screaming over trivial things, and statements from my sister and co-workers. I also prioritized my time with Ivy, teaching her to bike, reading her stories, ensuring she knew she was loved. Vanessa resented the attention I gave her. "You're ruining her," she snapped one day. "She expects this level of care constantly. Is it wrong for a child to expect love from a parent?" Vanessa's expression hardened. "Don't get clever with me." But I wasn't backing down. The most difficult part was the secrecy. Vanessa managed the money, watched my phone, and questioned every move I made. I learned to be discreet, using cash, opening a private email, and meeting my lawyer during lunch. It felt surreal, living a double life in my own home, but I did it for Ivy. One evening, Vanessa discovered a receipt I had missed. A deposit for an apartment. Her face turned white, then crimson. "What is the meaning of this?" I didn't bother lying. "I'm leaving, Vanessa. I'm taking Ivy, and I'm moving out." She gave that same mocking laugh. "You leave me? How would you survive? You're nothing without me. I've already secured a home. eBay already hired an attorney." For the first time in our marriage, Vanessa was speechless. He walked past her, took my coat, and drove to Lias. The battle had begun. The custody hearing was on a Wednesday. Vanessa arrived with her mother and a high-priced lawyer, wearing a confident smile. Patricia presented our case with surgical precision, the logs, the witness accounts, the 6-year history of abuse. Vanessa's lawyer tried to frame me as unstable, but the evidence was too strong. The climax came when Patricia played a voicemail Vanessa had left 2 months prior. Her voice, shrill and cruel, filled the room. "You are worthless. You are nothing without me. If you try to take Ivy, I will ruin you. Make sure everyone knows what a pathetic man you are." Vanessa turned pale. Her mother looked away. The judge stopped the audio and looked at her. "Is that your voice?" She couldn't deny it. The ruling arrived 3 weeks later. Primary custody was awarded to me, with supervised visits for Vanessa pending a psychological check. When Patricia called with the news, I was in my new place painting Evie's room her favorite shade of purple. He sat on the floor and just breathed. Relief, exhaustion, and hope washed over me. For the first time in years, the weight was gone. The following months were peacefully quiet. Evie transitioned better than I dared hope. She loved the calm of our new home. She still saw her mother, but under supervision, where Vanessa was forced to be on her best behavior. Leah came for dinner weekly, and my parents visited often. He reconnected with the friends Vanessa had driven away. Clary and I stayed in touch. She became a true friend who understood the path I was on. He never missed one of Evie's dance recitals. Vanessa, meanwhile, dealt with the fallout. The court's findings became common knowledge in her social circle. The friends who only knew her version of the story began to distance themselves. Her mother, embarrassed by the exposure, pulled away. The control Vanessa had wielded so easily evaporated once it was brought into the light of a courtroom. She called me once, half a year later. Her voice sounded thin. "I never imagined it would end this way," she said. "Neither did I." He ended the call. Some stories don't require a final conversation. I still reflect on Clary's 9 words. "Love should never make you feel this small." They were the mirror I needed to finally see the truth. One evening, I sat on my porch while Avi chased fireflies in the grass. She was laughing, free and happy. That was all I needed. He had spent 6 years shrinking for someone who didn't deserve it. Now, I was constructing a life of honesty. The project wasn't finished, but for the first time, the blueprint was mine.